Well-behaved women seldom make history. Today, I'm talking about women warriors and the art of taking up space. Hi, I'm Nile Harris, and today I'm talking about how women warriors take up space and don't apologize for it. And Eleanor Roosevelt said it. Well behaved women rarely make history. But before we get started with this important topic of how women can own and take up all the space that they want to, I want you to take a moment to follow and connect with me at I'm Nile Harris on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm also on Clubhouse and I'm on Nile Harris at LinkedIn. And let's dive into this oh so important topic because this month happens to be Women's History Month. And I'm talking about some fantastic historical figures when we get into and dive into how women can take up space. And let me first talk about what I mean by taking up space. Research has shown that women have been, especially in the workplace, been sort of culturalized, if that's a word, to be small, to play small and wait to get picked and wait to have their turn and wait to have their seat at the table. And that's just not the way it should be. And when I say taking up space, what I am saying is sitting at every table that you belong at, using your voice, raising concerns, talking about themes and topics of the day, and having your opinions heard and listened to. And that's in the workspace, and that's closing the pay gap, that's closing the management gap. And this also has greater impacts for women of color, Black women especially, when we are being told that our hair is too big, we're too loud, things like that. And so I'm talking to women this month or in this post really to talk about taking up space, take up all the space. You see space. If you see some unoccupied space, you go take that up. If you see occupied space, you go get into that space. I want to talk about first up is Pharaoh Hatshepsut. She is an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. That's right. I said she. She is she's the second confirmed female pharaoh. Now, how she rose to be pharaoh, her husband passed away, and her stepson was next in line to be king. But Tutmos III was too young to ascend to the throne. So she stood in as queen regent, which was typical of that time when there's a monarchy. And she ruled fairly well, but she found that she wasn't probably taken as seriously as she would have wanted to be, or as seriously if her title was pharaoh. So, what did Queen Hatshepsut do? She declared herself pharaoh. She got some sponsors, some mentors, and advisors, and declared herself pharaoh. There was no rule against it, and she was queen regent. That meant that her word was law. Now, what if she had stayed in her place as queen regent? And the other thing that she did, which was highly strategic, was that she embodied both the masculine and feminine traits of a leader. So she would wear the traditional headdress of a male pharaoh, and her skirts or dresses or jewelry would be that of a queen. And she embodied both the masculine and the feminine, which she felt was important to rule. If you're going to rule, you need to embody both because the both together make for the best leaders. And Egypt flourished under her reign. Tutmos III, her stepson, wasn't quite interested in ruling right away. So he went off to fight in some wars. And when he was ready to ascend to the throne, he did. But one of the things that he did was he attempted to erase her from history, not because he didn't like her or because he resented her, but because he was Pharaoh and she was still alive and he wanted to be seen as the leader. However, that did not stop Pharaoh Hatshepsut from building one of the largest temples in the Valley of the Kings. What if she had stayed in her place. Let's talk about Bessie Coleman, who really took up space, literally took up space in the sky as the first licensed Black female pilot. She couldn't get a pilot's license in America, so she went to France and got it. She was also the first Black person to hold an international pilot's license. What if she had just stayed on the ground and just been a nurse or just been a teacher? Not that those aren't great vocations and careers, but that's not what she wanted. What if she had done what other people had wanted? And Malala, at the age of 17, became the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She was shot for attending school as a girl, and she won the Nobel Peace Prize for speaking up, getting herself out of this situation along with her father, and became a world renowned speaker on this topic. And she didn't hide, she took up lots and lots of space and brought light to what is going on in her home country. Now imagine if she had just been silenced. And this next one I'm going to talk about needs no introduction. She is the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't even have to dig into a whole lot of details, but she has been one of the most pivotal people in modern history when it comes to women having equality at work, in healthcare, in the professional, and starting a business. She became an icon. It's hard to think of her as no longer here with us because her legacy is alive and thriving. These are just some of the women who decided they weren't going to behave well. They weren't going to stick with cultural norms, and they were going to take up space and they were going to use their voices. And one of the things that I want to point out and that we're talking about, and even though we're starting to see a shift for women and also women of color, Black women, we're starting to see this shift on social media, and we're starting to see this shift in workplaces and in entrepreneurial pursuits where women are starting to get more money for businesses. Women are starting to be recognized and pulled up in the workplace. They're starting to be pulled up on boards. That's right, starting in 2021. But one of the messages that I keep hearing that kind of I disagree with is that women need to get comfortable with asking for what they want. And here's my issue with the word ask. Ask implies something different, and I'm going to dig in that in just a little bit, because I'm gonna talk about how women can address that in taking up space. But we're seeing this. The point being, we're seeing this influx of messaging to women to take up space, ask for what they're owned, for what they're due, ask for more money, ask for promotions, and things like that. And what I know as a woman who did not get comfortable with taking up space for a long time is that we women tend to have courage in the places where we feel we belong, where we think we belong. We see other women, or it's mostly women. So, okay, we belong here. And so we have courage in those spaces where as women, we need to have more courage about the places that we believe we belong. We belong in all of the spaces, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. We belong in all of the spaces where decisions are made, where discussions are happening. We belong at the table. And we also belong in making the buildings, creating the rooms, and putting the tables in those rooms. We belong in all the spaces. And that's what we need more courage around, is not just having courage in the spaces where we think we belong, it's having courage to believe that we belong in all of the spaces. Now, how did these women that I've talked about buck the tradition? How did they go against the norms? It took courage. They did it afraid. That's not to say that these women weren't afraid. In the case of Hatshepsut, she did actually get sponsors and mentors and advisors who already had certain level of connections that could help ease the pathway for her to name herself Pharaoh. Same thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She created a network. She had network, but she also had a phenomenal husband who used his resources, not just as an ally, but as an accomplice to her success. They realized one important thing, that behaving well, so to speak, didn't benefit them. The system benefited from them being well behaved. The system relies on our silence. It relies on us being small and not believing that we deserve more and not demanding more. So I'm calling on this month of Women's History Month to unleash our collective warrior spirits and our individual warrior spirits to take up space. And here is the art, the 5 things to the art of taking up space as warrior women. Now, the first is to have courage in the absence. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. It's doing it afraid. And I kind of said that before. It doing it afraid, having the courage and walking into that room or walking into that meeting, speaking up in a meeting or having the courage to apply for a grant, apply for a promotion. Do it afraid. And then eventually, as time goes by and you do it more and more, you become less and less afraid. And it's okay. When the first time I applied for business school, I was terrified. And you know what? I was rejected from every school I applied to that first time around. But I figured out what I did wrong. I fixed it and I went back at it again. And the second time, in some ways, even though I was more prepared and I had information from the failure, I was probably more afraid of, okay, I've addressed all of everything and all the feedback. What if I still don't get it? Well, I got in the second time around. I got into my number one school. The second thing is to learn the game and play it better. And I hear women of color push back. I don't want to play games. I come to work. But here's the problem with that. The men are playing the game. The men created the game and they're playing the game. And once I released this notion of, well, I don't want to play the game. I just want to be recognized for the merits of my work. Once I released that and I started emulating what I saw some of the men doing, things changed dramatically in my career. And another thing, women, when you start doing some of these things like getting a sponsor, and a sponsor is different from a mentor. A sponsor, you may not even know that you have a sponsor. You might know your sponsor and you might not. But your sponsor is who is advocating for you in the room when you aren't there. They're the ones who are making sure when you're ready to declare yourself Pharaoh, that the pathway is clear for you. A mentor is someone that you can bounce ideas off of. They're on your personal board of directors. And an advocate is somebody who you probably do know that you've talked to before and you've gotten them sort of on your side. This could be a meeting that you're going into or a project that you're working on. And you have to work within these networks. Don't just meet with other women leaders. This was the biggest mistake I saw women making in terms of developing and cultivating this network. They would seek out other high level women, and those calendars are full because a lot of times they were the only high level woman, or maybe there was three, and women weren't talking with the other men. I will tell you, of the sponsors that I knew I had and the advocates that I knew I had that were Team Nile, most of them were men, and a lot of them were white men. Do not limit yourself to only talking to people that look like you, or that fall into the same group as you. This is the game. Play it better. Learn it, then play it better. But you've got to play it at all. Third thing, use your voice. The system depends and operates on your silence. It depends on you being too afraid to go speak to someone. It depends on you being too afraid to push back and say, nope, That's not what I said. Or no, I am speaking, sir. It depends on you being silent. Now, I get it. In the short term, using your voice might hurt you. But here's the thing, if you don't do it in the short term, you're giving up your long term gains. By giving up some of your short term benefits, you are going to create longer term gains. So, yeah, we have to be a little uncomfortable in the immediate if we want to make sure that our career is moving along the way that it should be, that we're closing that wage gap, that we're closing that professional gap, that we're getting the business dollars and grants and things that we need. You have to use your voice. We have to use our voice. And yes, when I started using my voice, folks were uncomfortable and I was unbothered. So the next thing is number 4, state what you want. Now, I alluded to this earlier, and I want to talk about this. Right now, we're in this moment where women are being encouraged to ask for what you deserve, ask for that pay raise, ask for that promotion. I have a problem with the word ask. In over 20 years of professional experience, this is my observation. And I'm not saying that this is backed up by any scientific research. McKinsey didn't sign off on this. This is my observation that men mostly stated what they believed they deserved. And women are being told to ask. And the difference is asking puts you in a position of requesting, of hoping that you get something. Whereas stating says, this is what I deserve. Here are my receipts. And that comes from, then you can go into a place of negotiation. But I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but I am saying this, between asking and stating gets more results. So instead of asking for what you think you deserve or for what you want, state what you believe you have earned and deserved and come with your receipts. Lastly, lose some weight. WAIT, calm down. I want you to give up the weight, waiting for when you are 100% ready for that role and you meet all the qualifications. Men don't. That is backed up by research, by the way. I want you to give up waiting for the perfect time. I want you to give up waiting for when you're ready. I want you to bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. And it doesn't have to be like the full jump. I'm not saying that you have to be an entrepreneur. Quit your job tomorrow, be an entrepreneur. That's not what I'm saying. Take a step forward. Then the next day, take one more step. Then maybe the next day, take one more step. Because by the time you get to the end of the year, you've taken hundreds of steps toward whatever it is that you're trying to get to. If you're trying to go for a promotion, go back to playing the game. Meet with a high level man. I've did not have any trouble. I did not find it any harder to get on the calendar of a high level executive male than to get on the calendar of a high level executive woman, other than the woman had less availability than the man, because every woman was trying to meet with the woman. And even though lots of men are trying to meet with the men, there were more men for the men to meet with. And I also found, and this is where you can differentiate yourself too, again, what I observed throughout my career is that men really only tended to seek out higher level executive men to be coached by or to be sponsored or advocated for. They rarely sought out speaking and getting on calendars with women. So if you want to be strategic about it, you need to be meeting with both groups, and you need to be meeting of groups from other races. If you are a Black woman, don't just meet with another Black woman or another Black male. If you are a white woman, don't just meet with white women or white men. You have to be meeting with everyone if you're going to cultivate this network. Regardless, stop waiting. Reach out. Like, oh, I'm not high level enough, or this person doesn't know who I am. Most of the people who I met with, when I showed up in their email, in their info box, or I walked right up to them and I introduced myself, they didn't know who I was. I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Nile. I work in such and such. I work for so and so. We have this in common. Our paths crossed at this meeting. They had no idea who I was. And I was like, I would love to spend time with you. And I got on their calendars. Stop waiting. Stop waiting. And by the way, I learned that. I learned it by watching men play the game. So this is it. That these are my 5 points to help us as women in the art of taking up space. We deserve to be everywhere decisions are being made. All of the spaces are our spaces. And these are the 5 things that I want us to do coming out of March for the rest of our lives when it comes to taking up space. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Please comment below if you found this useful and if you found this helpful, or if you disagree with anything that I said. I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Like and share this, and don't forget to follow me at I'm Nile Harris on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Nile Harris. I look forward to getting to know more about you, and I will catch you back here for our next Warrior Wednesday.